Some places in America's wilderness were never meant for us. Hidden inside our national parks are some of the most chilling, unsolved missing persons mysteries of all time. Stories so disturbing they've become known as missing 411 cases. Hikers vanish without a trace. Entire search teams comb the forests, yet no clues are ever found. No footprints, no backpacks, no remains. Just silence. These aren't ordinary missing hiker reports. They are unsolved disappearances that defy logic. They happen in patterns, in places where compasses spin, where sound dies, and where people step into the woods and never come back. From Mount Rainier's vanished hikers, to the forbidden waters of Crater Lake, to the haunted cliffs of Yosemite, these are not just creepy stories. They are true stories, real people, real vanishings, and the deeper you look, the more terrifying the possibilities become. Was it an accident? A predator? A cryptid lurking in the shadows? Something like Bigfoot or Sasquatch stalking the tree line? Or is it something far stranger? A paranormal force, an ancient power the parks were created not to protect us from, but to contain. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most disturbing, unsolved missing persons cases from Mount Rainier National Park. A young hiker who went into the forest, prepared, experienced, confident, and simply disappeared. Because in these wild places, one truth remains. People go missing. The search turns up nothing, and the forest keeps its secrets. So ask yourself, when you step into the woods, will you come back? Welcome to the fourth dimension. If you like stories like these, please subscribe and explore our channel for more. Now on with our story. Stephen Paul Mauk was 25 years old, born and raised in Washington State, a child of the Pacific Northwest. His earliest memories were of towering pines, the smell of wet earth, and the constant presence of the Cascades looming on the horizon. Where some saw mountains as intimidating, Stephen saw them as home. He was the kind of person who was most alive outside. As a teenager, he pushed himself further than most of his friends would dare. Long treks, steep climbs, days where the weather would shift from bright sun to torrential rain in the blink of an eye. Where others turned back, Stephen pressed forward, as if testing himself against the wilderness. But he wasn't reckless. He studied topographic maps the way some people pore over novels. He read guidebooks, carried extra gear, and learned survival skills from older hikers he admired. By his 20s, he had earned a reputation among friends and family as the one you wanted on the trail with you. Calm under pressure, resourceful, and quietly confident. By 1983, Stephen had begun working odd jobs to fund what he really loved, time in the mountains. Hiking wasn't just recreation to him, it was a way of life, almost a calling. He often told friends that the forests felt different than anywhere else, alive, watching, older than people realized. That June, Stephen planned what seemed like a straightforward solo hike. He logged his route with rangers, told his parents exactly where he was headed, and packed carefully. Warm clothing, food, maps, compass, and supplies for at least 2 days. He wasn't one to vanish carelessly. The destination he chose was Indian Henry's hunting ground, a remote alpine meadow on the southwestern flank of Mount Rainier. It was a place he knew well, lush, green, filled with wildflowers, crisscrossed by trails that seemed peaceful under the summer sun. Local hikers described it as one of the most beautiful, almost dreamlike spots in the park. But it also carried whispers of an older reputation. Long before it became part of the national park, native tribes had used the area for seasonal hunting. Stories passed down spoke of spirits inhabiting the meadow, warning travelers not to linger too long after dark. Rangers, too, sometimes mentioned how the place felt different, as if sound carried strangely there, as if the forest pressed in around the edges of the open fields. For Stephen, though, it was just another challenge, another trip into the mountains he loved. He had hiked that route before, knew the terrain, and saw no reason for concern. And yet, when he stepped onto that trail in June of 1983, there was an unshakable finality to it. It would be the last confirmed time anyone ever saw him. Stephen checked in at Longmire on the morning of June 25, 1983. Rangers remembered him clearly. He wasn't frantic, he wasn't underprepared. He looked like the exact opposite of someone about to become a statistic. Upbeat, confident, calm. His log showed a clear destination, Indian Henry's hunting ground, a trail he knew. a route he'd done before. The day was perfect for hiking. Mid-morning sun cut through the trees, the air was crisp but not biting, visibility stretched for miles. To any witness who might have seen him step onto that trail, there was nothing unusual about Stephen's departure. He was another experienced outdoorsman disappearing into the green folds of Rainier's wilderness. Except he never came back. When he failed to return the next day, his parents grew uneasy. By the second day, they were panicked. Stephen wasn't the type to wander off schedule. He was reliable, methodical. Something was wrong. They called the park. Rangers began their search. At first, it seemed routine, an overdue hiker, likely delayed or injured. But as the hours turned into days, the search grew stranger. Search dogs were brought in, but handlers noted that the dogs behaved oddly, circling, whining, and refusing to follow scents past certain points on the trail. One dog reportedly lay down flat, tail between its legs, and refused to move forward, as if something invisible barred the way. Volunteers covered the Indian Henry's hunting ground area in grid formation, expecting at least some sign: a boot print, a piece of fabric snagged on brush, discarded food wrappers. But the terrain was eerily silent. No prints, no broken branches, no signs of campfire or shelter. It was as if Stephen had evaporated between steps. The only reports that ever surfaced from those long days of searching were chilling. A ranger claimed that at dusk, he thought he heard a man calling faintly from the tree line. The voice was distant, muffled, but unmistakable, pleading. The team rushed toward the sound, only to find silence waiting for them. Later, when they regrouped, another volunteer admitted he heard something too, but swore it didn't sound like a cry for help. It sounded like laughter. By the end of the first week, frustration had turned into dread. Helicopters scanned the ridgelines, teams combed ravines, radios crackled with strange bursts of static whenever searchers neared certain parts of the meadow. The forest itself seemed to resist their efforts, and yet nothing of Stephen was ever found. Not his backpack, not a scrap of clothing, not a single boot print in the soft summer ground. The official record is clean and clinical, subject not located. But for those who were there, the memory lingers. They didn't just fail to find him, they felt something else was at play, something that watched them as they searched, something that wanted Stephen and had taken him. Even now, 4 decades later, the silence of Indian Henry's hunting ground feels heavier than it should. Hikers sometimes report the sensation of being followed. A handful claim they've heard a voice, sometimes calling their name, sometimes whispering just out of earshot. Stephen Paul Mauk walked into those woods prepared, confident, and at home in the mountains. But Rainier is not just a mountain, it is a place where people vanish. And on that summer day in 1983, Stephen became one of them. The first sweep was straightforward. Searchers followed Stephen's logged route from Longmire up toward Indian Henry's hunting ground, expecting to find something, anything, that would suggest where he'd gone. A footprint in soft soil, a broken branch, a candy wrapper, a fire pit, a trail marker left in haste. But the trail was clean, too clean. Helicopters circled overhead, their blades chopping the silence, scanning meadows, ridges, and snowfields with high-powered binoculars. Dog teams swept the forest below, noses to the ground, handlers urging them forward. And still, nothing. It wasn't for lack of manpower. Over 100 searchers joined the effort. Rangers, volunteers, mountaineers who knew Rainier as intimately as their own backyards. They spread in widening arcs, combing steep ravines, moss-draped forests, and icy streams that cut down from the glaciers. But Stephen was gone. The Longmire region looks deceptively inviting at first glance. Lush green meadows, towering firs, trails that seem almost idyllic. But step off those trails and the forest changes. Thick brush swallows visibility. The ground drops unexpectedly into cliffs and shadowed ravines. Streams run swift and cold, even in summer. And above all, Rainier's weather shifts without warning. A bright sky can collapse into a fog-shrouded void within minutes. Searchers pushed deeper, hoping Stephen had simply been injured or disoriented. Yet the deeper they went, the more the mountains seemed to turn against them. Radios hissed with static. Compass needles drifted lazily in circles. And several searchers later admitted they felt something beyond exhaustion. They felt watched. One ranger, who only spoke about it years later, claimed that while searching a narrow gorge, he saw movement in the tree line, something pale darting between shadows. He thought it might have been Stephen, injured, shirtless, trying to signal. But when his team investigated, the undergrowth was untouched. No tracks, no blood, nothing. Another searcher described a night in camp when the forest fell silent. No birds, no insects, just the crackle of their fire. And then, out of the stillness, what he swore was a man's voice calling from far up the slope. Faint, almost pleading. They scrambled toward the sound, yelling Stephen's name. But the voice receded, always just ahead, always leading them deeper into the dark. Until it stopped. Others heard it too, but not all agreed it sounded human. One volunteer swore it was more like a mocking echo, half laugh, half call. He refused to return after that. Despite the resources poured into the search, nothing surfaced. Not a shred of clothing, not a scrap of gear, not even the faint outline of a boot print in mud. Stephen Paul Mauk had vanished into a wilderness that does not give back what it takes. And the most unsettling part? The search grid wasn't infinite. This wasn't Alaska's endless tundra or the vast deserts of the Southwest. This was Rainier. Rugged, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But bounded, finite. For someone as experienced as Stephen to disappear without a trace, leaving no evidence for over 100 searchers to find, made no sense. Unless, of course, he never intended to come back. Or worse, something on the mountain had taken him somewhere the searchers couldn't go. As the days dragged into weeks, the official search logs began filling with details that, when read in isolation, seemed harmless enough. But when pieced together, they painted a picture far stranger than just a man lost in the backcountry. Several teams reported zones of silence so profound that it rattled them to their core. No wind, no birds, no buzzing of flies, nothing. One volunteer described stepping into one of these areas as if he had walked into a vacuum. Another compared it to standing underwater, pressure closing in around his ears, sound sucked away by something unseen. They began calling it the soundless zone. The dogs hated it most of all. Trained animals, accustomed to the scent of humans even across great distances, froze at the edge of those silences. Some whined, others growled low in their throats, hackles raised at shadows no one else could see. A few simply sat down and refused to move, trembling until their handlers dragged them away. Then came the aerial sighting. A helicopter crew scanning from above swore they saw the flicker of a campfire deep in a remote clearing. Smoke curling upward, the glow unmistakable against the darkening tree canopy. Hope surged through command. Finally, maybe a sign that Stephen was alive, sheltering, waiting for rescue. But when the ground team fought their way into the clearing, they found only damp moss, untouched soil, and no trace of fire, not even the smell of ash. The pattern grew darker when rangers began comparing notes. Stephen's disappearance wasn't isolated. Just 4 years earlier, Elaine Robertson, another experienced, prepared hiker, had vanished on Rainier under nearly identical circumstances. No footprints, no gear, no trace. Both cases had swallowed search teams in frustration. Both had left families without answers. It began to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern. Whispers spread among the searchers, though not in their official reports. Some said they saw flashes of movement in the corner of their eyes, something white slipping between the trees. Others admitted that, at night, they heard voices just beyond the firelight. One ranger confessed he thought he heard someone call his own name in Stephen's voice, though the man knew that wasn't possible. And then there were the shapes. One volunteer swore he saw 3 dark figures standing in the meadow at dusk, perfectly still. When he blinked, they were gone. Another claimed that at twilight he felt someone fall into step behind him, matching his pace, only for his partner to confirm no one was there. None of these accounts made it into the official record, but they lived on in hushed conversations, in the nightmares of those who searched. Mount Rainier had claimed Stephen Paul Mauk, just as it had claimed Elaine Robertson, and the questions left behind were more disturbing than the silence itself. What force could erase every trace of an experienced hiker? Why do voices echo in places where no one stands? What is it about Rainier, this mountain of glaciers and silence, that keeps taking people again and again? And most of all, who or what is waiting in those soundless zones for the next hiker to wander too far? Some argue Stephen may have slipped into one of the many hazards scarring Rainier's wilderness. Deep crevasses hidden beneath melting snowfields, lava tubes that run like veins under the mountain, or sudden ravines that crumble beneath a misplaced step. The mountain is a labyrinth of traps disguised as beauty. But searchers combed those areas meticulously. They probed crevasses, scouted canyons, and scanned cliffs with helicopters. No footprints leading to danger. No slide marks. No torn fabric caught on jagged rock. Even a body hidden under snow would eventually shift, release scent, or leave some trace. Yet there was nothing. It's as if the mountain closed itself after swallowing him. But can nature really erase so perfectly, or was something else responsible for ensuring no trace remained? Some whisper Stephen crossed paths with someone who didn't want him to walk back down. Mount Rainier's vast wilderness has long attracted more than hikers and climbers. Survivalists, fugitives, and even rumored cults have made their homes in the shadows of its ridges. Could Stephen have stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to see? A ritual in the forest? A hidden camp? Something worth silencing him over? But if it was human hands, the efficiency is chilling. No drag marks, no campsite disturbed, no tools or weapons left behind. What kind of person can remove another human being so thoroughly that even dogs and helicopters come up empty? And if such people exist, how many more are out there, hiding in our national parks? Then comes the darker theory, the one locals lower their voices to speak about. Rainier has long been considered a home to Sasquatch. Campers have reported guttural cries echoing through valleys, boulders hurled from unseen ridges, and massive shadowed figures pacing them from tree line to tree line. Stephen's disappearance carries disturbing parallels to other missing Form 1 cases. Dogs refusing to track, as though terrified. The soundless zone, a place where nature itself seemed to vanish. A strong, experienced man vanishing without leaving even a scrap of clothing. If Stephen encountered something primal, something intelligent, did it stalk him before it struck? Did it take him alive, silencing him before he could cry for help? And if so, why was no trace left behind? Do these creatures bury their victims, hide them in cave systems beneath the mountain? Or, more unsettling still, are they capable of doing things we don't understand, things that bend the rules of reality itself? And then, the most terrifying possibility, that it wasn't human, animal, or accident. It was the mountain itself. Mount Rainier is more than just rock and snow. It is an active stratovolcano, ancient and looming, spoken of in hushed tones by indigenous tribes who described it as alive. Some legends claim the mountain feeds, taking lives as offerings. Others speak of spirits that guard its slopes, punishing those who tread where they shouldn't. Modern researchers have recorded strange anomalies: compasses spinning, electronics shorting, unexplained electromagnetic fields. Hikers report feelings of disorientation, sudden nausea, and the sense of being pulled somewhere unseen. Did Stephen stumble into one of these thin places where the barrier between worlds is fragile? Did he walk through a doorway that only appears in silence? If the mountain took him, then where is he now? Is he wandering somewhere else, calling out into a void no one can hear? Or worse, did he become part of the mountain itself, another secret it refuses to give back? Stephen wasn't a careless person. He wasn't lost. He wasn't underprepared. He was young, strong, intelligent, a man who grew up in these mountains and understood their dangers better than most. And yet, on a bright June morning in 1983, he walked into Mount Rainier and was erased. No body, no boots, no backpack, nothing. His parents waited for his return, expecting to hear the crunch of boots on gravel, the door swinging open, his familiar voice calling out. That sound never came. Searchers never recovered even a thread of his clothing. It was as if Stephen didn't just die, he was plucked out of existence, removed from the world with surgical precision. And so the haunting question lingers: what has the power to do that? If it was nature, why was nature so silent, so perfect in covering its tracks? Even avalanches leave wreckage. Even predators leave blood, bones, torn fabric. Nothing in the wild consumes everything. If it was human, then who, or what kind of person, can dismantle another's existence so completely? To silence every cry, erase every trace, and vanish without a footprint? Is there someone or something living in the forests of Rainier that knows how to make a person disappear better than the earth itself? And if it was neither human nor accident, then what was it? Mount Rainier has claimed countless climbers, hikers, and wanderers, but Stephen's case suggests something more terrifying than death. Rainier doesn't just kill, it takes, it hides, it keeps. Is the mountain itself alive, feeding on lives offered up in silence? Is it a gatekeeper to somewhere else, a doorway hidden among the trees where a single misstep means you never come back? Or is something hunting in those forests? Something intelligent, something patient, something that knows when you are most alone. Ask yourself this: how many more names have been lost to the same silence, never reported, never remembered? Because the deeper you dig, the more you find patterns. Cases like Elaine Robertson's, Stephen Mauk's, and dozens of others swallowed by the national park system. Similar disappearances, same lack of evidence, same void where answers should be. A puzzle with pieces deliberately missing. So the question remains, what is taking people from our national parks? And when you find yourself hiking in the shadow of Rainier, or any vast wilderness, and the forest suddenly grows too quiet, when the birds vanish, when the air itself feels heavy, when even your own heartbeat sounds too loud, ask yourself one thing. Are you truly alone out there? Or is something waiting for you in the silence, the same way it waited for Stephen? Because if the mountain wants you, you won't even leave a trace. Please subscribe to our channel for more stories like these.